What's up, y'all? It's TruthTiger, and I'm going to talk about how a satanic cult has taken over the world. With all this stuff with the Epstein files and the Diddy parties and all this crazy crap that's going on, I've been digging and doing a lot of research into what the religion of these people are, what their culture is, and you know, when you have worlds where people have islands of underage girls to SA, you got these PDF file islands and these horrible parties and this insane blackmail they do to people, and you know, when you have all this crazy stuff, you have to look at what spiritually underpins it, what kind of world these people live in, what they believe. And you know, when you read these accounts, especially the very far out stuff about them eating babies and stuff like that, which is in there, it is, and there's a lot of stories and accounts about child sacrifice and cannibalism and stuff like that. The cannibalism thing is pretty heavy with that jerky code word that they have. Oh, I brought over the jerky, I have fresh jerky, I'm switching from real food to jerky, we went through the jerky too fast. It's all over the Epstein files. It is, and the thing is, these people live in a completely different world than us. They perceive the world completely different. I think of it like this: if you took a bunch of serial killers and made them intelligent, most serial killers are actually not very intelligent people when it comes down to it. If you made them intelligent and gave them bigger goals and bigger ambitions, you gave them connections, you gave them money, you gave them the proper tools and stuff like that, that's what you have with these global elitists. It's the mentality, the psychopathic mentality of, say, a serial killer, of someone who wants to kill and torture. But then you add, you know, ambitions for money and power and the intellect and the connections to be able to do so. And that's what you basically get with these people, is this kind of serial killer mentality that they have. And I mean, they are serial killers, especially Jeffrey Epstein and stuff. A lot of those kids got killed, and a lot of the witnesses and the former victims started to speak out, got killed, and a lot of celebrities who have started to, you know, speak out against this stuff have gotten killed too. You know, they have. A lot of, they say it's a suicide or an overdose, but a lot of them have gotten bumped off. So these people are serial killers. I mean, they are. But yeah, with all this stuff, they have this satanic religion. And the thing about Satanism is, it's not necessarily the worship of the devil, it's the worship of one's own ego. And with any religion or spiritual movement, there's going to be the people that are very adherent to it, the people who are very into it, the people who really believe in it and practice it. Then you're going to have a lot of hanger-oners who are just, they're there because that's what all their friends are doing. They're there because they're psychopathic and sociopathic and they're very evil, but they don't really believe in all of it. But they're like, yeah, hell yeah, you know, we're Satanists, we worship the devil. You know, they're just evil. You know, so they're like, I can go along with this, but they don't really want to perform the rituals necessarily. But they do want to, you know, do terrible things to children, kill children, eat people, whatever. They want to do all that, but they're not really into the ritual side of things. So you definitely have two groups of people within that. You have people who are just interested in world domination, and they just want to control the world and be greedy, and they're Satanists in that sense. But there are a lot of rituals. Like in the Epstein files, it talks about how King Charles he killed a bunch of babies. Basically, Jeffrey Epstein had his human breeding farm, and I mean, this stuff's hard to talk about. This stuff is hard to freaking talk about. I mean, it's so outside of the realm of what we perceive to be normal, but it's proven, it's documented, eyewitness testimonies, you know, files, whatever. I mean, this stuff is proven and documented over and over. But you know, so in this human breeding thing, Jeffrey only wanted to keep the girls to use for SA purposes, the children, I should say, to use for SA purposes, to use for perverted PDF file awful purposes, and then the boys just kill them, you know. And I guess King Charles, the King of England right now, he sort of was the master of ceremonies and put on some kind of ritual. So I think what happened is Epstein's like, oh, you want to do one of your rituals? I got a bunch of babies for you to kill. I'll hook you up, you know, come on over to the island. I think this was in New Mexico, maybe. There's also a ranch in New Mexico as well. This may have been on the island. I'm not sure where to place this one exactly. But anyways, you know, they did that thing where they killed a bunch of babies, sacrificed them to Satan, whatever, maybe set up some pentagrams or did some crap like that. You know, I definitely heard some stories like that where there are some people that are very into the ritual of it, and they actually have, you know, satanic high priests and mages and a bunch of weird crap like that they do. And I'm going to talk about that side of it, not just the side of people who are psychopathic and sadistic and just want money and power and are like in it for that. I'm going to talk about the spiritual side of it and how people get funneled into this. So I think the main funnel is probably Freemasonry or whatever other secret societies are similar to Freemasonry. What, you know, Freemasonic orders or similar Freemasonic-like societies, and the people are very compartmentalized. So you join the Freemasonic society, it's some traditions, it's some silly rituals, it's just kind of like a fraternity for older men. You know, everyone hangs out together. There's some boring rituals you do, whatever. And the people on the bottom have no idea that the people on the top are, like, you know, sacrificing children. And I just like to say eating babies because it's the most extreme thing on there. I just like to say that just to, like, rip off the Band-Aid, whatever. But a lot of bad stuff happening to children, a lot of, you know, SA to children and stuff. But the people on the bottom are kept out of that. And that's probably the biggest feeder to this type of stuff. The second feeder is just people who have worldly ambitions. They want to become famous. They want to become rich. Maybe they already are rich or famous, but they want to reach a higher level. So then they make their deal with the devil, if you will, get initiated in. From what I heard with the celebrities at Bohemian Grove, they are forced to go through certain rituals, and if they complete the rituals, they will move up and they will become famous, and they will sort of sell their soul for fame, if you will. These rituals often involve them needing to SA children, even things like bestiality. I've heard that these rituals involve, and they'll have to sort of make their deal, and then those satanic priests will go to the people with the money and the connections and, you know, get them where they're at. And how the people with the money and the connections, like the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and stuff like that, how they started with Satanism or whatever, I'm not totally sure, but they probably fall into the next category, which is a lot of people are born into satanic families. So there are satanic families that exist. I was watching Jeffrey Epstein's niece, I believe her name is Anya Weiss. I saw an interview with her, and she was essentially told that her family was ostensibly Jewish, but actually underneath that they were Satanists. I grew up as an Orthodox Jew. I never saw anything like that. If there were people like that, they definitely weren't going to tell me about it. So I never saw that personally, but that was what it was with her, and she was drugged throughout all of her childhood and used sexually by shitty adults. She lists Larry David as one of the people who did it. And, you know, I think Seinfeld was very funny. I think Curb Your Enthusiasm is a very funny show. I won't look at Larry David the same way again, but I guess he was very bad and very deep into this type of stuff. And I've heard multiple accounts from people who've grown up in satanic families, and the family will ostensibly be Jewish or possibly Christian. I've heard about, you know, families posing as Christian or posing as Catholic or posing as belonging to some sort of ostensible organized religion, but underneath they are really Satanists. I heard an account from a woman that this was back in the 1950s, actually in Seattle where I live, where she had these psycho-satanic parents, and they would kill cats in front of her. They would do tons of SA to her, you know, really just did horrible stuff to this woman, but they were going to church on Sunday and saying they were Christians. So I've heard multiple accounts, just going through YouTube and doing my research and reading up on stuff about this kind of thing. And the thing is, I think all the elitists are Satanists, but not all Satanists are necessarily elitists. I think there are satanic rings and covens that operate on a lower level that are not necessarily connected to the big money, but they practice Satanism, for ego gratification, for sadistic pleasure. Some of them are able to do magic of some kind, cast spells for people and get paid to do it. Cast spells for money for themselves and get paid to do it and stuff like that. So there are definitely satanic families. Again, back to the account of Epstein's niece, Anya Wiss, I believe her name is. She said that, her family, they said they were satanic, and it's something that they've been doing in the family for generations and generations, and they belong to the cult of Baal. Baal is mentioned in the Old Testament, so whether this type of stuff started in some later period or it really does go back thousands of years, I'm not sure, but I do believe it goes back thousands of years in these kind of satanic families. And I think a lot of people like the elites, the real blue blood elites. I think they really do come from these satanic families and have used sort of deals with the devil to gain power and fame and stuff. The royal families are heavily involved in this ABUSE, in this child trafficking, in this child sacrifice. The British royals come up a lot. And if you look to the accounts of Anarchy Lucas, who definitely look her up, she's got some really great accounts. She grew up being trafficked by a ring in Belgium in the 70s and the 80s. And she was trafficked to the Belgian royal family quite a bit. They would bring her to castles and do horrible crap to her. She did witness a child sacrifice that David Rockefeller did, and there was pentagrams and all that type of stuff. He was definitely very into the spiritual side of it, and was getting pentagrams set up and had a child sacrifice. She was not sacrificed, but was essayed by him. But this other kid was sacrificed in front of David Rockefeller. And it's very hard to believe. It's very out there. It's very cartoonishly evil, but this stuff is happening. This stuff is going on. And this satanic cult has taken over banking, taken over the military, taken over politics, taken over Hollywood. It's taken over. It really has taken over the world at this point. Probably has controlled the world for a while, maybe on and off, but it seems like most of the ancient royal families were doing this Satanism or were a part of this Satanism, so it does go back to the ancient royals and stuff like that too, who are doing these kind of things to, I guess, allow them to have money and power over the people or something. I don't know exactly, but this seems to go back to the royal families as well, and is big in the royal families, this kind of Satanism and this satanic worship. And then the next funnel that I see is just people who become spiritually initiated into Satanism, sometimes as children, sometimes as adults. Zachary King, he is a former Satanist, and he used to be a high priest in Bohemian Grove. He's definitely another great resource to look up. He has a lot of great information, and by his account, what started him out with Satanism was when he was 10 years old. Another boy invited him to go to the bathroom. They turned the lights out, and they did, some kind of thing where you say Bloody Mary in the mirror 3 times, and then a burn victim would appear. And it actually did. And, so he was, able to cast spells and stuff like that at an early age. And, he started casting money spells, and then he started being sexually ABUSE'd by a teacher, and then got involved in the Satanist family where, and a side note, the Satanist families, they pretty much exclusively sexually ABSU, spelled that wrong, but they essay their own children. and they'll oftentimes sell their own children to another satanic family to be raised and essayed by them. And, you know, I mean, I won't tell his whole story. You could check his stuff out, but essentially he's able to perform these money spells, but there is a cost. He ends up getting essayed pretty bad, gets pulled into a coven at a young age, becomes a mage at a young age, is starring in Child, PORN. I'm not going to say the full thing, but you know what I mean, at a young age. And then eventually he sort of says, hey, I've been in this coven, I'm 18 years old, I need to find a new crew, what's the next level? And then, he finds out about this group with 1 million members that is this satanic coven that's trying to, do world domination. That's their goal. And then he gets connected to Bohemian Grove and the elitist satanic circle, and is a high priest at Bohemian Grove, and is initiating certain people in who are to become celebrities and stuff like that. And but it was just a childhood experience with witchcraft that got him started. And I have my own childhood experience with witchcraft. Luckily it didn't take me down that road, but I remember I'd play with my friend. He was 2 years older than me, and he had a sister who was a year younger than me, so we would all hang out and play together and stuff. I was probably around 9 or 10 years old at this time. I was quite young too, and his little sister would have us play this game and do this thing where we would be able to pick up an adult for kids through a magic spell. And I didn't think of it as magic. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what was going on. I just knew it worked somehow, and I was like, that's cool. I just thought it was some psychological trick. We didn't really know what it was, but it was a magic spell that we did. So what we would do to her dad, so her dad would sit on the ground, and then we would each, I'd put my hand over, she'd put her hand over my hand, he'd put, her brother would put his hand over my hand, and we do this little ritual. We're like putting our hands on top of each other over his head. And by the way, her dad is built like Peter Griffin. Her dad was definitely over 300 pounds. And then, us 4 kids would make our fingers like guns. I think we'd do it like this or something. And 4 children would put our fingers under his armpits and, the crease of his knee. And we would pick him up off the ground. And, I remember that, and I remember thinking back, like, how is that possible? That's magic. So we would do this magic spell, and I didn't think much of it. It didn't go anywhere. I kind of tested it out. I'm like, well, let's do it if we don't do the ritual. And we couldn't lift him up. We're like little kids. We're like, how am I going to lift you up on 2 of my fingers when I weigh 90 pounds and, we're small children? That's not possible. But just kind of hocus pocus like that, doing a bunch of Ouija boards or whatever, you can find yourself in the satanic life doing that. So that is another way in. John Ramirez has a similar account. His account also involves folk magic too, which is another pathway in. But where the devil told him to put on an amulet. When he was a little kid, he puts the amulet on, and before you know it, he's a black magic sorcerer. And I'll go to folk magic too. So like people who are, into Santeria or something like that. Santeria is a form of magic that originated in East Africa. And then with the slave trade, which was very unfortunate, obviously a very bad thing, that traveled over. It got mixed with Catholicism, and then they were, doing this magic practicing, and that could also be a pathway to, Satanism and the Satanic Society. And I don't know if all these things are exactly interlinked, but they seem connected. I mean, Wiccan is a Celtic form of folk magic, which could also lead to Satanism as well. There's folk magic in Russia. I know a guy who, I've known some Russian people, and they've talked about that. There's folk magic in Asia. I know a guy from Indonesia. He's talked a lot about that. So just being big into that folk magic, that could be a pathway to Satanism as well. But to really get into the elitist circle, it seems like you have to have certain ambitions. You have to sort of want money and power and world domination and stuff like that. If you're not necessarily after that, I don't think you'll necessarily be involved in that. But yeah, you know. And then, you know, back to the Freemasons. I used to work with a guy, good guy, great guy, awesome guy, got along with him really well. I could tell he was connected to the Freemasons. I didn't even need to say anything to him. I could tell by looking at him. I had a spiritual intuition. He's also Rh negative. He's got Anunnaki DNA, whatever. Separate video. I've talked about that before. But I could just tell, and I asked him about it. Really awkward conversation. It felt very uncomfortable. I didn't want to press on him with it. But he just told me that, yeah, his grandpa was in the Freemasons and da-da-da-da. And I was like, okay, interesting, you know. And he kind of told me, you know, he didn't tell me a ton about it. He was pretty uncomfortable talking about it. So I just kind of dropped it. I like the guy. Wasn't going to worry about it too much. But there's things like that where, you know, I can kind of pick up on. And that I could kind of just intuitively know somehow, you know, through the Holy Spirit to detect these things. And not only that, but I remember I was helping a friend out. Good friend, like the guy, cool guy. And it was kind of a thing where I had to do a favor for him and I had to move something while he was out of town. And then I moved it to the spot. And it's this, you know, I don't know what to call it, some kind of community collective kind of thing. And the place was not very well organized. It seemed like it was just a bunch of people hanging out and drinking beer and, I don't know, working on tech stuff or playing Dungeons and Dragons or something. But they rented this little spot out and it was very jam-packed and it was very disorganized. But I saw a Leviathan flag. It's a satanic flag and it says Leviathan. It's spelled in Hebrew, you know, Leviathan. You know, because I grew up Jewish, so I know I don't speak Hebrew, but I can read it and I can kind of know what it is. And it's spelled in, and it's got the goat head. And I realized, like, okay, these people are involved in some Satanism. Again, I don't think they took it very seriously. I don't think they were eating children or, you know, essaying kill children or casting spells or doing anything too serious. But they were, on some level, involved in that. And, you know, that could be a pathway into it too. You know, there's more of these kind of things than you think. I used to work with another guy. Again, the guy worked very hard, very well respected. We all liked him, but every day he would get an energy drink and he'd draw a pentagram on it. He'd draw a pentagram on a Post-it note, put it on his energy drink. I never asked him about it. I commented on it maybe once. I was like, what's a cool pentagram, man? Whatever, you know. But I think back on it now, I'm like, why was he doing that? That's kind of a weird thing to do. Every day at work, you draw, I mean, that's some kind of ritual he was doing, though. I don't know what it was for or how it worked, but he was doing that. And, you know, I kind of realized these things, like this Satanism is kind of everywhere. It's just kind of hidden. You know, the devil doesn't want people to know about his dirty deeds. That's why all the Epstein Island stuff was hidden and tucked away. But it's there, it's out there. This satanic cult is there. Another person who's out there on the internet teaching a lot is a guy named Mark Passio. And Mark Passio started with the Church of Satan. That's another pathway in, would be the Anton LaVey Church of Satan. And for the most part, it's not very serious. For the most part, it's just a bunch of angry, rebellious metalheads. Yeah, worship the devil. But when you get a little level higher, you get to the real stuff. And I think he started to get involved in the real stuff. I think what he was involved in didn't involve very much rituals. I think what he was involved in was more just like world domination, manipulate the world psychologically type stuff. But he got out of that. He became a priest in that. And then got introduced to the higher level, then got out of it. And then has done a ton of research after the fact. And, you know, there's stuff he shows. There's one where he shows an organization, a governmental organization that works with NASA. I forget what the organization's called, but he's showing their patches. And their patch, one of their patches is like a snake eating the world. Another patch is like an evil wizard casting a spell on the world. Another patch is like a dragon encircling the world. And you know, they're all just really, another patch is like a devil with his claw, like eating the world. And you know, you realize like, okay, like this stuff is everywhere. Another place that it's big in is intelligence, CIA, whatever, you know, that type of stuff. It's very big in that. CIA, international intelligence, obviously Mossad, with Jeffrey Epstein being so tied into that. You know, that's Israeli intelligence. But in the intelligence community, because they're all spies and there's all this trickery and stuff like that, they tend to be very big into that as well. And that tends to be a hotbed for Satanism as well. And there's a whole, like, you know, like there's Aleister Crowley, who called himself the Great Beast and would do all these magical rituals and was a really horrible person. I mean, really terrible guy. But he sort of wrote the Satanic Bible and do what thou wilt and stuff like that. So they work off of his teachings and they try to do magic off of the stuff that he does. And, you know, these Satanists, this satanic cult has taken the world over. I mean, I've talked a lot about what it is and how to get into it, and you know, just like got into the ins and outs of it. But it's a satanic cult. It's very secretive. It's very, very secretive. And they have had their goals of world domination, and they have taken over the world. All the presidents from the past, who knows how long, have been involved in this satanic cult. Most of our celebrities are involved in this satanic cult. Most of our CEOs are involved in this satanic cult. Pretty much all the bankers and all the big money people are involved in this satanic cult. And everything we have, from our two-party division politics to all these crazy wars to the crazy education system to the crazy politics, they're in the back influencing it. Like, they like extreme, crazy things. They want society to be more psychopathic and divided and crazy. They don't want us all coming together. They want to subtly and in clever ways sneakily dominate the world. That's the whole goal of this satanic cabal, is to dominate the world secretly and not have us know about it. But the lid's been blown off. The lid has been blown off. And we know what's going on. Epstein files are leaked, and all this stuff is out there now. And it's become very obvious that the world is controlled by a satanic cult. And not only that, but this satanic cult, like, if you do an act of love, if you help your fellow, if you pray, if you do good, you emanate God's energy. Similarly, if you do evil, you emanate the devil's energy, and demons come onto you. And then those demons can maybe teach them things, or allow them to do magic, or make them feel powerful, or whatever it is. So that's why they do, like, you know, ABUSC to children, because that satisfies the devil, you know. And you think about, so they're trying to, like, create pain, create suffering. They're trying to create trauma. They're trying to, like, trauma bond us all to the government. And with events like 9/11 and COVID-19, those trauma bond us to the government. Those create an excuse for a war, an excuse to force vaccines, an excuse for more control, whatever. And they do events like that. I mean, I don't think it's just those two. I think it's a lot more than that. But they manipulate the story, the agenda. I think a lot of celebrities who supposedly committed suicide actually were bumped off by them. I do. There's stuff in the Epstein files to support some of that. It's 3 million pages. I'm not going to read through it all, but I've been keeping up on what's going on, and there is definitely some funky stuff going on. And this manipulative cult has taken over. They've taken over our financial system. They run the Federal Reserve. They run all the banks. They're behind all that. And, you know, like, they have a very tricky way of doing things. Like, Jeffrey Epstein's niece was talking about the family she was in. And I guess her dad is Steve Epstein or something like that. And he posed as, well, for one, he posed as a Jew, but was actually a Satanist. And he posed as a divorce attorney, but he was actually secretly running Viacom which is a big entertainment company behind the scenes. So they do these kind of sneaky, weird things like that, where they're trying to make it look one way, but really it's another way. And they're very, very tricky and kind of secretive. You know, they do stuff like that. So that's one thing to kind of think about, is like, the devil's a liar, and guess what? His servants are liars too. And they're doing anything to kind of cover up the trail, make it look like it's not bad, make it look like it's not this or that, but really they're up to some really, 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 really nasty business. And this satanic cult, it's in my city, it's in your city. I talked about this before, but the Space Needle in Seattle where I live, who built it? The Pentagram Group. 5 businessmen came together and built it, and they decided to call themselves the Pentagram Group. Oh, you know, okay. Just a coincidence. Just a coincidence. I mean, this thing goes so deep. This thing goes so deep, but they have taken over America. They have taken over the world. They have taken over the world at this point. Because they've done it through fraud and through scams and through secretism and through manipulation and through games, well, the game is getting discovered. And when the game gets discovered, it falls apart for them. So that's kind of where we're at now, is to speak about this thing and to talk about this thing and to realize that a lot of these people, they're secret Satanists. I mean, one name I saw in the Epstein files that really shocked me was Tom Hanks. I loved Forrest Gump. I loved Castaway. Wilson. And Tom Hanks is in there for, like, mutilating children. I guess Jeffrey Epstein kind of was sort of trying to create a super race, or he was trying to create, like, he was doing genetic experiments on children and on babies and stuff, and really freaky stuff, a lot like what Joseph Mengele and the Nazis did. He was doing that. And I guess Tom Hanks was like, that was his thing. He couldn't wait. You know, he couldn't wait to do that type of stuff, and he'd go down in the basement and he would mangle children, and it's horrible. It's really horrible. And, you know, a lot of the political ideologies we've been fed have come out of these people. And they want us to be getting into extreme ideologies too. I mean, it seems like this is going to sound, a lot of the stuff I've said is crazy, but I think they want to push us towards either far right kind of fascism, Nazism, whatever, or far left Marxism, communism, whatever, because that divides people, that brings people down, it brings down the vibration, and it allows for an elite ruling class to have total control. One thing that Anarchy Lucas talked about is, I guess that, you know, they did have a literal former Nazi doctor who they kept alive or whatever, you know, who was part of their whole shebang, and he would do experiments on her of some kind. And with Epstein's niece, she said there was a big picture of Vladimir Lenin up on her dad's wall. And I think they like these politics because it divides us. It makes us fight against each other. It makes us not notice what they're doing. And they want us to get into like really extreme, dark stuff. Because with those extremist ideologies, if you look at history, like, that's what's going to cause the most bloodshed. Whereas if you have a normal, just not extremist ideology where you're like just kind of moderate about stuff, you're like, we don't have to like kill the people on the other side. We don't have to scapegoat some group of people. We don't have to do anything horrible. You know, we can just chill. But when you get involved in those extreme ideologies, it's like, no, we gotta kill. We gotta make a war. The revolution will be bloody. Like, you gotta like get crazy. And they like that type of stuff. And, Aleister Crowley claims to have sent Hitler his Bible or whatever. And, he claims to take credit for Hitler and all the horrible things he did. That's just, I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what I've heard, but that is one account. And I've heard some stuff about them being involved in the formation of communism as well. And I've heard a lot of stuff about them being behind a lot of bad things. And the thing is, to us, it seems like that stuff's opposing each other. To us, it's like those are opposites. But in their world, it's a tool to divide the population. Like, these people are extremely manipulative. They're very good at using psychology against you. And that's kind of a lot of how they have their power and control, is through psychological tricks, psychological manipulation, divide and conquer, and, to get the average person riled up at the wrong thing. They're very manipulative. They're very sly. They're very cunning. They're very tricky, and, they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And this satanic cult has taken over the world. And they're sick, and they're sadistic, and they're psychopathic. And if they continue on, for one, they're going to dominate the world more. They're going to make us more enslaved to them. They're going to bring about more war, more destruction, more greed, more insanity. They're gonna make the world a horrible. The world already is a bad place, and if they're allowed to roam free, they're gonna make the world even worse. And unless they're held accountable, unless the head of the snake is chopped off, which it needs to be, they're gonna keep running amok, and they're just gonna get worse and more insane and more crazy. I mean, there's stuff about, like I said, genetic experiments on the Epstein files. I mean, this stuff is so horrendous, so atrocious, and I think every single president, going back to who knows how long, has been controlled by these people. I've also heard accounts, this one comes from Jeffrey Epstein's niece, of people being forced to essay children for blackmail purposes who did not want to do it. How they were forced to do that, whether it was, we're going to end your life, or we're going to not give you fame and fortune. I mean, that seems like a weird thing to not walk away from. I don't know how they forced them to do it, but there were some people that actually did not want to participate in this stuff, but did, or whatever, made a bad decision and did it, but we're not even wanting to do that. So there are definitely people who got blackmailed into this. Not an excuse for what they did, not an excuse for what they were a part of. They should have walked away from that, whatever the consequences were. But there definitely is a lot of blackmail. And I mean, Jeffrey Epstein talked about blackmail. Anarchy Lucas talked about blackmail. So I think with these people, they're all like such psychopaths. They can't form a normal friendship. They have to like blackmail each other and screw each other over and, whatever, like eat babies together and go nuts and stuff in order to maybe have a bond. They got to like trauma bond with each other and stuff. I don't know, but this is a sick, insane, satanic cult that's running the world, and it's real. It's very real, and we got to do something about it. We got to do something about it, because the more this stuff goes on, the more they're going to rob us, and the more this stuff's going to be out in the open, and they're going to turn the world into a really sick, sadistic, satanic 666 world if we're not careful. So yeah, I've been talking for a while here. This video's gone on a long time, so I'm going to probably put a pin in it right now. But thank you all so much for watching. Much love. God bless. And God is stronger than the devil. Love is stronger than hate. And we're going to beat these Satanists, these PDF files, these freaking pieces of crap. We're going to beat them in the end. So have faith. All right, God be with everybody.